we're gonna get started like very soon. Just need to open the meetings file. Okay, and Feroz, are you taking care of the recording?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Then I guess we can get started. So did you already started the recording, right?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, cool. So welcome everybody to this Metal3 community meeting. Today is Wednesday, 30th of September. And as usual, we'll start with a round of introductions. So if you are new to this project, like you've never like attended one of these meetings, or you did, but you want to now introduce yourself because you started working a bit with the project, then please feel free to do so. I'm going to pause for a couple of seconds. So just take this opportunity if you want to say hi.
Hi, my name's Rick Pioso. I'm with Dell EMC. I've been working upstream on iDRAC the last several years, focused on primarily the iDRAC driver hardware type. And thank you very much for letting us present today. Appreciate it.
Yeah, welcome.
Hello, my name is Aija Jauntaeva, and same as Richard, I'm working on iDRAC in OpenStack. Thank you.
Great, nice to have you here. Is there someone else? No, okay, cool. Then I saw that you actually indeed have a nice point on the agenda. However, you said that it would be pretty long, so I would propose maybe that we take the shortest ones, like this, like BMO update and like things that need like very short discussion before, so that then we can like focus on this one without like time constraints. How does it sound to you?
Sounds great.
Okay, cool. Then like I have added this point on the agenda, maybe like hoping to force you, Doug, to give maybe a small update on the BMO PR and like how it's coming up.
Yeah, sure. I think that pull request is probably ready to merge. I don't want to pressure people to review it too quickly or anything like that, but I feel like if we let it go past today, then I should revert those CI changes that are blocking the other changes and plan to redo the work another time. I'm not sure that the results of redoing it would be significantly different from what we have right now. So I think you, Mail, had one comment about getting the right version of Customize installed, and I could either fix that as part of this pull request, or I could submit another follow-up one. And I think the thing to do there is just to remove the part of that code block that looks for an existing binary and tries to ensure that there's one in the private tools directory or wherever it's putting it now. I think you're right, we should do that. I just hadn't done it yet this morning. So.
Mm-hmm. So do you plan to like put it now in the PR, or would it just come after in a follow-up?
I could do that either way. So if you think that we can go ahead and merge what we have, then I won't change it, and I'll submit a follow-up as soon as it does merge.
Is there like anybody who still didn't have the opportunity to have a look and wants to have a look at it before we merge it, or like are we like reaching consensus here that we would be okay?
I haven't heard from anyone specifically, so if there's anyone on the call who wants a chance to look at it first,
I'll take a look at it today. Thank you.
Okay. I think Zane had a bunch of good comments, and Angus Salkeld also looked at it. So you know, with Mail reviewing it, I feel pretty confident about it. I'm happy to have other people review it too, of course.
Okay, and so Zane was like pretty okay with the current state of the PR. I am too. So whenever like if like Digambar, like you're like having a look and think it's okay to go, then I think we could put a LGTM on the PR.
Sure.
Okay, great. That sounds good.
Cool. Then like hopefully it's gonna go in by by the end of the day.
Yeah, I'll take this on priority today only.
Cool.
Okay, thanks, Digambar.
You're welcome.
Then if there's no other like comments or questions regarding this specific PR, we can maybe like have a short discussion about the relationship with the between BMO and CapM3 and how things are going to like change from now on, because the way the PR is doing it now is to create a config folder while we still have the old deploy folder, because that old deploy folder is what is used by CapM3 and by Metal3 devenv when deploying BMO. But of course we need to change this, and the problem is that the config folder being generated by KubeBuilder, we actually have exactly the same thing in the well, like some of the elements generated by KubeBuilders are exactly the same in BMO, in CapM3, and in the IPAM controller. And this is problematic because when we have a customization that imports all of them at once, it finds duplicated elements. And that's something that we will that we must address also to get the full like let's say the migration to the target target state, let's say. So I had been giving it a bit of a thought that we could, the way we could do it is that instead of importing directly the BMO customization from CapM3 or from Metal3 devenv, we could actually render it every time, or take the take a rendered version upstream, like let's say we would make a pre-release kind of thing on GitHub that would contain this rendered customization, and then we would import this, because when we render it, there is this prefix that are added to all the resources, and the prefix is actually specific to BMO. So if we import the rendered one instead of importing directly the customization itself, then we don't hit the problem of duplication. But this would put kind of a requirement that we would need to release a current version, let's say, of BMO with a rendered customization, so that we can use this from CapM3 when generating the manifest on CapM3 side without having to clone parameter operator. Or we need to find a solution that we would actually, like, every time clone BMO, render it, then build the rest from that.
Can you explain a little bit more what the issue is with the duplication? That part wasn't clear to me. Is it that?
Yeah, sure. So the KubeBuilder generates automatically some elements, right? Like the roles, or like the role binding, like whatever. Like some of it is basically generated with the exact same name every time in all the projects.
Ah, okay.
So those are the ones that whenever we do import a KubeBuilder rendered generated customization from another KubeBuilder generated customization, we get conflicts, because customize takes all the initial elements and then adds things on top. But it first builds the tree, and when building the tree, then it realizes that there's two things that are colliding.
Okay. If we edit the files that KubeBuilder generated, is it going to cause a conflict the next time that generator is run?
Exactly. Yeah, we tried this with the IPAM, and then whenever, like the next time we did make generate, then like part of it got just like put back to the old name, and then the rest was like out of sync, and like it got really in a mess. So we gave up with that path.
Okay, so your suggestion of the working with the pre-rendered files, how would like what's the actual mechanical part? How does that work? Do we have to generate something additional and check it in, or you were talking about tagging releases?
Yes, so we would need to like run customized build on the customization from like the BMO config folder, and then with that put that into a release so that we have a URL where we can fetch that that file predictably. Like, yeah. So basically, it's always there at this URL. It has downsides though, because our customizations include the config maps that should be configurable at runtime. So it means that when we will import this customization, we will need to build well, the customization importing this rendered one will need to have overrides for the config map, and also maybe for the images. Like, but that we can take care of on the CapM3 side.
Okay.
You mean substitutions? You mean post-customized substitutions?
Yes.
Okay.
So
that's
we would
done in the airship also. Okay. Nice.
Yeah, we would actually do the import and then put config map generator merge, like to overwrite some of the config map options, because we don't know them until we actually render the config map to deploy it, right? That's at that time we know with what it would be the ironic URL, but before that we don't.
But it will be only the first layer, right? One flag basically, not multi-tier.
It could be multi-tiered, like you could have like a customization importing the CapM3 that itself imports the BMO, right? And in that case, you could still overwrite the config map from your top customization. Even if we did it already in CapM3, that wouldn't matter actually.
Don't you think it will create issues in substitutions? We have some use cases in airship, we ran into issues. So just want to caution, if it is hierarchical, I don't know, is it a merge or is it an individual level? Like I can take one metadata and replace that with some data?
In that case, we would just be talking about merging two config maps, right? The one coming from the higher level that you're using, and the one that would actually come from BMO and have the wrong values.
Okay. So it's a merge, simple merge. No,
exactly.
Nothing, no metadata changes and all that. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and then the merge should behave the way that when you give the thing to be merged, the keys and value on that one would overwrite existing ones from the original object.
Okay.
Is this, I'm sorry, I don't know a lot about customized, so I'm probably asking really basic questions here, but is this a problem because they expect customized to be used to deploy something where it's all in the same repository? Or have we done something with the naming of our components in some way that causes this name conflict thing? Or are we not passing an argument somewhere that would cause unique names to be used or something like that?
It's not, the problem is not coming from the customization files themselves. It's more like the actual resources that have the same name, and the way customize works, and the fact that it builds a tree first of everything before applying any customization actions on top. So we can't do anything to solve this except like renaming those resources. And I said, like, then it doesn't play well with Kube Builder.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So the requirement that we have is from the CAPI side, where we need to have a single file that contains everything to install CapM3. And this needs to be published as a release in a CapM3 release.
Okay.
And we were using the customization to do that and importing all the BMO parts. We can, of course, rethink the way we are doing it and split completely the thing so that we would have like first generate the CapM3 customization, then generate the BMO customization, then the IPAM one, and then bring all that together under a single file, just merging the 3 files that we have, like with a simple concatenation. But in that case, some of the things that are configured normally at the CapM3 level would be problematic. For example, like we need to override some of the BMO config map values. And that's why we were like, for now, like importing it and putting customization on top
Right.
until now. Of course, there's different options. The question is, do we want to have to pull in the whole BMO like config file every time we want to release, or every time we want to generate the components file for CapM3? This is like basically done in every single Metal3 dev deployment. Or we do a pre-rendering and make it available for the, like, for example, like through a release of BMO. And in that case, whenever we have a PR and we're testing a PR for BMO, we can just regenerate that file and use it as an override for the deployment instead of fetching from the GitHub release.
Hey, Mail, can we make it that as a process for every project under Metal3? Because I think that is the way ahead to resolve all the conflict and upgrading.
Yeah, because we're going to hit this exact same thing with the hardware classification, right? Like
right.
If we want to
Exactly.
pull that in, CapM3 deployed with cluster CUTL, then we're gonna hit the same problem.
Yes.
How often do these files change? Like I know one of them is the CRD file, and that would change pretty often. Well, I mean, not terribly often, but it's subject to change. But the other files, how often do those change?
Rarely. The webhooks can change whenever you're introducing a new version. Otherwise, they pretty much change only if you get a new version of KubeBuilder.
Okay. So would it be possible for us to have a project that just has all of the customized files in it?
It wouldn't solve the issue that of the duplicated resources. Like even if everything was in the same repository or whatever, like the location doesn't really matter in that case. It's really just the fact that the role bindings and everything have exactly the same name.
And there's really no way to control that with controller gen?
Well, I haven't found yet, but I didn't look too much in that direction yet, actually. Maybe, yeah, that definitely would be worth investigating.
Yeah. But we'll definitely need a customization for every project. That's the requirement.
Yeah, what I was thinking was, I mean, I forget, I'm sorry who did the work, but somebody put a bunch of customization files in to generate stuff related to the ironic deployments, right? And that was all done by hand, as far as I know. We could move that anywhere. And if we did the same thing with the bare metal operator output and just changed names as part of that move, and then we did the same thing with the hardware classification controller. If the files don't change very often, it doesn't seem like building a bunch of automation around figuring out how to merge them. That it seems like just doing it once by hand might be simpler. I don't know though. I mean, I don't know. Maybe you've already looked into this kind of stuff and it's just not the right approach. So.
There's quite many resources that are actually conflicting. So
yeah,
we would need to identify them all and then like rename them by hand.
Yeah.
And they are referenced, like cross-referenced in multiple places. I think just running this customization build is much easier in that case because it actually puts the prefix for you. Right?
Okay. Okay.
So it's just a matter of like having the files, then running customization build. We can even put it as part of the like in the repository, right? In the BEMO repo in somewhere specific.
Yeah.
And so that we can always import from master, for example. And
Yeah,
we don't tie it to a release.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. If we don't have to do a release every time that file changes, then, I mean, I want us to get to a point where we're actually tagging releases, but I don't necessarily want that to be on every commit. So,
yeah, that was definitely not the proposal anyways.
Yeah, yeah.
With
do
the
we need
current,
go ahead.
I have a small question too. Like with the current status of this 655, is it? So does it like now will it like coexist this config and deploy folder until we have a solution for this, or?
Yeah, that's the goal.
Okay.
That we fall back on the deploy, and because at the moment we don't foresee much changes on the config side, but they will get out of sync at some point. Like it's not possible to keep going this way.
Okay.
Right. The one file that we did care a lot about was the CRD file, and that is now a symlink, right? Or, oh no, that didn't work, did it? So we have to.
Yeah, it's duplicated.
Yeah. Okay. So that's probably another short-term change to make in the make file, is to copy the file from the config directory to the deploy directory every time we run that build, just to make sure that that at least is in sync. And then quickly solve this problem, and the customized experts in the community. I'm just going to accept whatever proposal that you guys agree on, because I have no idea the best solution to this. So.
If we check in the rendered customization in the repo, then and make sure that through our generate job or something like this, that it's always up to date by running like the customized build on it every time, then I think that would be an acceptable solution. Probably we would just pull that from Metal3 dev whenever we are not testing a PR that is from BMO. Because in the case of testing the PR from BMO, we would build that customization from the repository that we have at hand.
Sure, that makes sense. Yeah, so we could just add that to the manifests target, I think, and then it would generate, because I think that's the step where it generates the output in that directory. So yeah, and we could do the extra copy in there. We could do the build that customized build that you're talking about, whatever we need to do in that step.
Yeah.
Yeah. Should I add that to 655, or do you want to do that as a follow-up?
I think it should be done as a follow-up. Like 655 is already sufficiently complex, and it's working now with the deploy folder.
Okay.
So we can just put it afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah, we can create a next one. Yeah.
Does someone want to sign up to do that?
Okay, I'll work with Mail on this, because anyway we need for hardware classification, and for every project I'll take that responsibility.
Okay, great. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thanks. Is there any further comment on this, or should we like move to Summit's point? Okay, cool. Then Summit.
Yeah, hi, Emil. So, we can combine this with the bug scrub as bug trial, but if not, I just want to give a heads up. We have recently started seeing this issue while using the Power servers, and the node introspection part is failing, the onboarding part. So, if anyone is working with the Metal3 and Dell Power server, can offer a help here. Maybe Fari or somebody who is actually working. I saw some threads in Slack channel. So and I think we have also discussed the changes which we do for real hardware with Peruz and Kasif call we took couple 2 days back. So I think the changes were fine. I mean, they were correct as far as I remember. Right, Peruz or Kasif? Can you add your points?
Yeah, basically like they were having some custom variables when deploying the Metal3 dev, but we checked that they were okay. The only thing that was weird is that the BMH was getting stuck in the introspection state, and then Sumit was giving some logs that were coming from the DHCP, but I was not really sure what is the cause of that. We saw that maybe it could be because of the ironic image after the sequential IP was introduced, but Sumit, I guess you tried even excluding that comment.
Yeah, we tried that. Yeah. Yes, it did not work still. So I have attached all the logs which I shared over Slack. I have also put them in the issue. So probably someone from community can take a look.
It was not working since last update on the ironic image, because previous to that it was working fine.
So did you try to run without this patch set that introduces the...
Yeah, actually, Digambar, I mean, that is still like point under investigation. Like we tried the stable images as well, and there also we are facing some issue. So same issue. Okay. So we tried to put a tag and like the tagged images, but still it did not work. So I was guessing that something is missing on the config side, but like what we cross-verified, it did not point out to exactly what is wrong. So
just to understand, what do you mean by stable image? So you manually created an image excluding that commit, or you just used stable image to check?
We used stable image. So before V3, which is 2 months ago image, so we used that image.
Stable means last tagged image.
Last tagged image, rather. Which I should
Okay, so the commit was not there, and you still see the same problem. So
yes,
okay,
yes.
but
so
we can like whoever like would have a look also there, like.
Sure. So that is why I said like if someone is working on the real node and the hardware can offer help here. Because this used to work earlier, I don't know what.
Yeah. Actually, what's happening? There are two pixie means that which file, Sumit, that was.
One is the dual boot IPXE file, and the other one is based on what mode your node is. Either it is in UP or it is in BIOS. So there are a couple of ones. So for BIOS, it is UNDI only .kpxe, and for UP it is IPXE.efi. So these two image files are actually sent. But in this failing case, we are only seeing the second one and not the first one.
Correct. First file is not pushing up. Actually.
First file TFTP transfer is failing. So, but that issue is not observed with the virtual nodes which are created in dev environment.
Correct.
So I couldn't really match up to the expectation. Like it is happening well with working well with the VMC and not with the real. So.
Okay.
So maybe somebody from community can have a look and suggest a way or check whether we are doing it right or
wrong. I will though need to cut the discussion a bit because we promised 30 minutes for the at least 30 minutes for the demo on the other side. Sorry, actually it took longer to go through the 3 points than I was expecting, but yeah, now like let's take the remaining 30 minutes for the like presentation of this like molds, configuration molds in Ironic, if that's fine with you.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. Thanks.
All right, so should we dive right in?
Yeah, sure. Floor is yours. I can stop sharing if you have anything to share and like put.
Yes, please.
Yeah, great. Do you have the possibility to share?
I'm working on it. Just one moment. Please let me know when it comes through.
It's working.
Okay, great. So yes, thank you again for giving us this opportunity to present this proposal. Aya and I are proposing an idea to enable deployment with bare metal system configuration molds in iRonic. So let's go over the goals of the proposal. There are several of them. One is to be able to replicate the configuration of an existing so-called golden system to other similarly capable systems. And by similarly capable, we mean other systems that have similar hardware configuration, similar, say, network interface controllers, RAID controllers, disks, that kind of thing. Another goal is to get the existing system inventory or the inventory immediately following a completed configuration. The inventory itself may include information about the hardware system, that system subsystems and components, and configuration settings of all of the above. So some of the information will be, information about the product, or the vendor of the product or the component, the name of that component or product, serial numbers, service tags, these kinds of things, but also, of course, configuration properties or attributes as well. And the elements of the inventory can be read-only or read-write. One of the goals we have is to propose this as a vendor-independent API. And that's an important consideration, something that we're trying to get some feedback about from other communities that might be interested in this feature. And finally, a goal is to accelerate hardware configuration. Primarily, that would be done by reducing the number of system reboots required to apply the desired configuration. So I'll go ahead and pass it on to Aya. Aya?
Yeah, so our proposal is to add new clean and deploy steps to iRonic to accomplish to make this possible. And so there will be 3 steps: one to export configuration from existing system, and import configuration to other systems similarly capable, and also a third one that will do import and export as an atomic operation. So after we have applied some changes, we can get its current state afterwards. And we will be using configuration molds. That's how we call files that will be stored somewhere and reused for different servers. And then there is an example of iRonic API, web API, how this could look. So iRonic has an endpoint where it can change states, and for clean step, we will define target clean, and we'll give clean steps, and if it's one step given, so it will be import configuration, and the most important part here is the configuration name that will indicate the name of the configuration mold to be used. And if we compare how it's, if we compare it with current functionality in iDRAC and what we are proposing, so currently for each subsystem there are separate clean or deploy steps, so like separate for BIOS, separate for RAID, and after each step there may be like separate reboots that adds time while configuring system, and currently there is no functionality in iRonic to export configuration from existing system and apply to other systems. And we are proposing to overcome this by this proposal. Like there is one step that allows to configure several subsystems, and that way it also may require only one reboot. And again, with this functionality, we can configure a golden system as a starting point, and then use it as a basis for configuring other similarly capable systems. And here is an example of the configuration mold, which is a JSON file. We are proposing at the beginning to have like 3 sections for bias RAID and OEM. So bias and RAID uses the same syntax that is already currently used in Ironic for their specific steps for bias and RAID steps. And in OEM section, we plan to add like whatever is necessary for hardware specific implementation. Like they can add their anything they want, and they can also choose not to use it at all and only use common bias and RAID sections. Yeah, back to you.
Sorry, I was on mute. Sorry. So let's dive in a little bit into the details of the iDRAC driver implementation that we're considering. So the
before that, can I ask a question?
Sure.
What does the OEM mean specifically? Is there any example you can give?
Well, the OEM means that it's specific to the driver that is offering, what's specific to the interface implementation in Ironic driver parlance. And usually that's going to be specific to a vendor, a vendor's hardware, a vendor's BMC, and what it offers. So okay. I think perhaps when we get through this slide right here, you'll get a better feel as to what that means.
Sure, thanks.
Mm-hmm. So diving a little bit into the iDRAC driver implementation, we plan on leveraging an iDRAC feature called Server Configuration Profile, SCP. That profile contains sections for BIOS, RAID, Network Interface Controller, iDRAC, and other properties and subsystems. SCP supports subsystems which are not currently configurable in Ironic. Examples include NIC and its ports, including PXE boot configuration, the baseboard management controller itself, accounts, passwords, its network connectivity. So what SCP enables is the ability to apply the entire configuration in one reboot. And it also offers the ability to export configuration, including the system itself, subsystem, and component inventory information, in addition to the configuration settings. And in the iDRAC driver, we would use the DMTF Redfish out-of-band management protocol to communicate with the iDRAC. Yeah.
So we will show short demo. We have a proof of concept build, how we will update the system to configure RAID, how one virtual disk, and also update one of the BIOS settings. So next slide, please. And the demo is a little bit shortened because it takes around 15 minutes. So we have a system that has 0 virtual disks, and virtualization technology is enabled. So, and we have a node that's in manageable state, and we will start cleaning it by providing configuration mold. So here it is, like configuration name indicates a JSON file. We start cleaning, and the node is in cleaning state. If you look at the server, it starts PXE booting. So there's a command issued. And so after PXE boot succeeds, it launches Ironic Python agent, which is a RAM disk that does all the work. And so, yeah, there's a lot of logging happening. It receives clean steps from Ironic conductor. And so this is like clean step being processed by server. There's a task creating on iDRAC. On the server, there's, again, it's configuring it, running, It's one task that does all of it. And like after the task is completed, Ironic needs to boot the server back, like needs to boot the RAM disk again to complete cleaning. Like we see the task is still 99%, but like it's almost completely done. But yeah, server is still processing and booting again to RAM disk. Now checking the task is really done on iDRAC web. And if we check the node now, it's in manageable. It means cleaning succeeded successfully. And we should be, now we should be checking like on iDRAC web. So what happens with virtualization technology? It's disabled now. And checking virtual disks. So there is one disk created with that one configuration mode. And yeah, that completes our demo. Thank you.
So we have listed a bunch of references for those that would like to learn more about this. There's a storyboard story up. We've got a work in progress specification that we're working on. And there's some Ironic upstream administrator documentation that could provide more information about cleaning and deployment, as well as the specifics of BIOS and RAID configuration. And finally, we've got a couple of links to documentation on the iDRAC server configuration profile. The second one there, the attribute registry, will provide some insight into the richness of SCP and all the things that can be either read or read and written. It's, I think, if I recall correctly, a couple hundred pages or more of details on all the attributes that can be read and read and written. So next we the opportunity to have a discussion.
I have a excuse me.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question. Like, is there any facility to use the profiles, machine profiles, and change the iDRAC settings, like maybe RAID, device, and networking?
Well, you'd have the ability to define the RAID configuration through the RAID section of the mold, but you can also do it through the OEM section using, in the case of the iDRAC, the SCP way of expressing the RAID configuration. And in terms of, I think you asked about configuring the iDRAC, the networking or something else? I'm sorry. Hello?
Yeah, networking.
Yeah. So you can configure the iDRAC networking as well. Although, you have to be careful to make sure you don't lose connectivity to the iDRAC when you do that.
Okay. So is this machine profiles in the sense like I mean using Ironic, or we just have to do that on the iDRAC server UI?
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble understanding what you're asking. You're breaking up.
Machine profiles in the sense it's like on the iDRAC UI server page, right? You getting me?
I'm sorry, I'm still having difficulty. So you would not use the iDRAC UI, right? That we were looking at that in the demo just to observe the observe what's going on the server while iRonic is managing, iRonic's managing it and running the clean step. This would all be done through the iRonic OpenStack CLI. Is that what you were asking about? Whether or not it's done through the iDRAC itself, it's web UI, or
Yeah.
No, we don't do it through the iDRAC web UI. That was just showing the progress of things by watching the server itself. Right? So that the demo was basically flipping between the command line where the OpenStack CLI commands are being issued. The system console is if you were standing right at the system and watching its console, and the iDRAC web UI to watch the progress of things from the iDRAC, from the iDRAC's perspective. But what we're proposing interacts with the iDRAC, but the operator or the software using iRonic does not need to directly interact with the iDRAC. Rather, it uses the iRonic RESTful API, or perhaps it's Python binding, to perform, this cleaning on an iRonic node. Which in turn, the implementation of that at the bottom of the stack uses the iDRAC driver in our case to then talk to the iDRAC itself. Does that help?
Yeah, it would also help if there's any documentation where I can set up such profiles in iRonic and be able to change the settings. Any documentation?
Well, right now this is a proposal, so we're proposing it and trying to get it accepted by the iRonic community as something that they would approve. So are you? We did have a sample configuration mold, but right now, you can't do this in iRonic, right? This is a proposal, and we're looking for feedback from Metal3 community as to the value of such a proposal within your community.
And Doug also has.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I had two questions. First, you had several links to other documents and things in this presentation. Could you share a link to the presentation itself, maybe putting it in the meeting document so that we can look at it, review it again later?
Yes, we can definitely share it. I don't know if we don't have a link. It's a, it's a PowerPoint deck.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So maybe Google Drive or something like that.
Yeah. Do we have? Does Metal3 have an account that I could put it on, or could I just email it to one of you and?
Yeah, I guess you can just send it to one of us, like by email. Like we'll put it ourselves on the Google Drive, accessible to everybody.
Okay, that'd be great. Yeah, would you mind just sharing your email address in the chat, or however you want?
I send it you on private message.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, and then the second question I had was about the API itself. It looked like the proposal was to pass a reference to a JSON file and have that pass through the API to the driver and let the driver, I guess, download that file, or where does it get the file from? How does that part of it work?
I'll let Aya cover that. Aya?
It's still a work in progress, but like there have been some discussions that the file is stored in Swift. It can also be stored somewhere on the web server that is accessible by iRonic conductor. But depending on needs, we can extend like possible storages. Like it can be like anything where we can store file and then we can retrieve. There also have been discussions that the file is actually stored in iRonic DB in a new database table, where it also manages rights who can access that file. Like if there are multi-tenant systems and we don't want that like one system can see other systems files, templates. But yeah, it's still in discussion, but it will be stored somewhere based on requirements, so it works.
Okay.
Right. So this is actually Doug. This is input that would be very valuable to us as to what kinds of locations would work for the Metal3 community.
Yeah, no, that's what I was about to get to. Is I'm not really keen on the idea of a file at all. I could see what we've been trying to build is an expressive API and an opinionated client for Ironic. So what I would expect is that users would use the host API to set these configurations. And then the bare metal operator might pass a URL to Ironic that points back to a web server that generates that JSON on the fly or something like that. Like, I wouldn't want the user to ever have to upload a file anywhere, if that makes sense.
Right. So what you're saying is the automation would generate it based on some client, opinionated client input,
right,
and then make it available on a web server.
Yeah, and it would be even more ideal if instead of, and maybe this is a modal thing, so maybe, maybe for some people who use Ironic, having files is preferable, but for us, because of working in Kubernetes, there's not really a place to put files easily. So, so it would be ideal if we could just embed all of the instructions in the step when we pass that to Ironic. So we don't even have to build a web server, right? We just build a nice data structure of some sort and pass it in.
Right. So the idea is it would just be streamed as part of the JSON workload or data included in the API invocation.
Right, exactly. Just like the rest of the data that we're passing now. I like the idea of passing it all at once. And I certainly like the idea of applying it all at once on the server. That seems like it would really speed things up. I'm a little hung up on the file aspect of the API. So yeah.
Yeah, so just to give you a feel with SCP, I think the size of the mold, if you use, and I can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think if you export a system's configuration with SCP, say from a golden system, you'll get something on the order of a half a megabyte. So we're holding out that it can be anywhere from a half to a full megabyte in size.
Okay.
So it could be a bit chunky.
Yeah, I would not expect to expose all of those settings through the Metal3 API. So
right.
Yeah.
Right. So that's
possibly to export the data. If we could have a convenient way to do that, I'd have to think about where we would put it and that sort of thing, because that's getting up to the size where putting in a Kubernetes resource is going to be problematic. So.
Right, and I know that like on the airship side, they wanted the ability to sort of reconcile what they think they have with what they actually do have.
Sure.
So in other words, hardware shows up, it's racked and stacked, it's supposed to have this, that, and the other, but then they want to actually, query the device itself and find out, hey, what do you have, and then reconcile accordingly.
So does this provide more detailed information than Ironic's inspection?
I'd say that it's probably different. I don't know if we've done a, property by property comparison, but it's going to get into, serial numbers, part numbers, data manufacturer, manufacturer name, part name, product name, these kinds of things.
Okay.
As well as like everything, pretty much anything you could do with the iDRAC to configure any element of the system that it provides management of or offers management of will be visible in what's exported.
Okay.
We do have the ability to export sort of subsystems. We don't have to export the whole thing. One can request, just export the BIOS, just export the RAID, just export the network information. Or you can say export everything. So of course the size of what's generated will vary based on the choice made.
And you mentioned making this a vendor neutral API. Is there a file specification for that then, so that somebody knows how to structure this thing, or is it is the file itself going to be vendor specific, but the API for passing the file is vendor neutral?
Well, we're proposing that the API be vendor neutral. That is that on the management interface, the base class, that we would add these three methods, and any implementation, of course, would have to implement them and fulfill the contract specified by the base class. And then in terms of the content of the configuration mold, we're proposing that anything that iRAC supports configuration of, and to start, that would be BIOS and RAID, that can be expressed in a configuration mold in the same way that it's expressed in iRAC. So like we had the example in the mold there of the BIOS and the RAID. And so those are two things that iRAC currently supports. And as iRAC perhaps adds the ability to configure more and more things, then the mold format would, be revved to support those new things.
Sure.
And then anything that falls outside of what iRAC supports, at the option of the implementation, could be expressed in the OEM section, and that's a vendor by vendor thing.
Okay. Yeah.
Hey Rick, I think what is the base requirement for this? Means node should have passed introspection and should be in ready state. In iRAC case, it's a manageable state.
All it has to be is enrolled in the manageable state.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, it should be able to be PXE booted, and that's really, for now, that's a limitation in iRAC right now. Even if the step is an out-of-band clean step, it wants to boot the RAM disk. We don't really need that RAM disk, which is sort of unfortunate. And we're trying to work with the iRAC community to eliminate that requirement. So that business of booting the RAM disk, at the beginning and end is sort of bogus.
Yeah, because to perform this task configuration, you have to go to in-band, right? Always.
Well, iRAC wants to boot the RAM disk to basically query the RAM disk to see if it has any clean steps.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter in this case because the clean steps that are being executed are all out of band. So, yeah, it's trying to get basically a complete, set of steps that might be available to be executed. Who's offering them, and then I think it's looking for a match. I'm not really familiar with all the details there, but the point is that it tries to boot the RAM disk, which is sort of unfortunate when the operator is only asking for out of band. So long story short, the system doesn't really need to be PXE, boot configured. You just need to have a management network connection to it, and the iRAC node itself has to, be in the manageable state.
Okay.
I'll have to jump in there, sorry, because we're reaching the end of our meeting time.
That's fine. I appreciate that. I've got another meeting to go to in about a minute.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the presentation. Really interesting. We'll definitely follow what's going on there.
Yeah, thank you, and we'd appreciate any of your input as we.
This one question, a short question. So I have been using the Metal3 iRAC and bare metal operator. So we are actually designing our own on-prem cloud. So we need Metal3 iRAC to provision the systems. So what I did is that I took the Metal3 bare metal operator components and started provisioning the bare metals using the OS CentOS 7. So I started provisioning it. It happened very well, but when I tried with the Debian generic cloud QCow, then it's telling me that clean failed. So the provisioning status. Any take on that?
I would just be able to tell you, please open an issue with what is happening for you, with the logs, all the logs, and all the information. We can't just guess it out of thin air like this. So please open an issue on the repository that is linked to what you're seeing, maybe bare metal operator if you're not sure of what's going on, and then we will take it from there. Is that fine?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that's good.
Okay. One last comment is that there is an ongoing doodle for the network proposal discussion. Please have a look and fill it. If it doesn't fit, especially for the US, please add a comment on Slack, and then we can maybe schedule a second session. With that, I think that's the end of this meeting, and have a nice end of day and a nice week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.